Hey everyone, welcome to this week's video, and this one's about how dyslexia can make you kind of a better UX designer. I know it's helped me. With it being Dyslexia Awareness Month, October, I thought that I'd park my original planned video, which is the e-commerce product page that will come next week, maybe, because I am doing an interview with Shaz, SEO specialist, so that's coming next week, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, let's get into it. As somebody with dyslexia, I realized that over the years, it's not just a limitation, it's actually one of my biggest assets and advantages as a designer. So for those that, that don't quite know me, I run a design and UX business called Gigaflux, where I focus on helping brands create seamless human experience online and bring new ways of thinking and simpler thinking to people's websites or apps or back-end systems. And honestly, a lot of what makes me good at that comes directly from my dyslexic brain. You see, dyslexia isn't just about all the reading and the spelling differently. I think it's all about thinking a little bit different, like on a different plane. So like if this is the box, I can see the box, if that makes kind of sense. Like I can see spotting patterns, connecting dots, seeing other things that people might overlook. I've always been kind of like a little bit different, and that leads me on to the first section, which is about how dyslexia enhances UX thinking. So when I'm working on a product or project or website, I don't just see data layouts, I see behavior. And a lot of the time I can spot things like that's not quite right, or this doesn't feel quite right when you're navigating or looking at somebody's page, or like I look at cluttered layouts and cluttered menus, and like I can see where things like, for example, I noticed that somebody was repeating pages, and that damages your SEO in a way. You see, there's different ways. It's a good way. It used to be a really good way of doing stuff, but it's also a very old way of doing stuff. And it's almost like I have an internal heat map, but I also use heat maps, obviously, and I can instantly pick out what's working, what might be confusing, why people are dropping off. I look at stats and I'm like, yeah, that's really good, but we could be doing a little bit better. And that's one of my biggest strengths, is pattern recognition. I tend to see the bigger picture, spot trends pretty quickly, and I think kind of like 3D, like I said, like I feel like I'm here and the box is here, like I feel like I'm astral like projecting, which is a weird concept, which is exactly kind of like what UX kind of needs. It needs a different way of thinking, but also be able to see the lateral way of thinking. And that leads me on to the second section, which is like creative problem solving. The other thing that I've kind of noticed is that dyslexia pushes you to find a bit more creative solutions, because we're like front cortex, like we think with the opposite side of the brain in a way. So traditional ways of like doing things don't quite fit the way that we process information. We naturally find new routes and maybe different problems that somebody else hasn't seen. So when I'm designing user journeys or interfaces, I'm constantly asking, how else could this work? Another way someone might experience this kind of thing kind of helps me design experiences that are inclusive, intuitive, and genuinely human. And, as somebody that's struggled with dyslexia, not found a proper way of learning in school, that's kind of gave me a sympathetic and empathetic approach. So yeah, and that leads to like the broader impact in empathy. And empathy does play a massive role too. Like when you grow up processing the world a little bit different, like I have, you develop a deeper understanding of the frustration of what it's like for somebody who just doesn't fit into the mold, and just sometimes it just doesn't make sense. For example, I struggled with foundation papers over the higher papers because of the language change, right? So my brain just didn't like the simplified information. I wanted the higher paper. So that kind of thing just, makes the empathy come through a little bit more, and it translates directly into what we do with design. And it helps me create websites and products that are a little bit clearer, easier, and a bit more enjoyable for everyone, I guess, because simplicity is sometimes key, and you can find different routes to different things. And using proper principles and using, proper web structure and app building, I kind of see things a little bit different in terms of like a bit of process. But yeah, like, it's mad, isn't it? Something that was perceived negative could be something really positive later in my life, and it's so weird. So this month, I want to shine light on neurodiversity and dyslexia in particular, as it can be a pure superpower in creative industries like UX design, video editing, just graphic design in general. And that's where we have an advantage technically over AI as well, because AI doesn't think like a human. So yeah, if you're a neurodivergent, don't hide from your differences, use them, okay? Harness your gift. What makes you stand out there, what makes you different. Your brain doesn't think in the standard lateral way, and that's exactly what gives you an edge to creating something really original, because everything's copied these days. Nothing's really different anymore, and that's okay because it's processed. But with neurological, function, we've got a little bit of originality. So I'd love to hear from others, and as always, like, subscribe, comment, share. I'd love to hear if you're a neurodivergent designer, then I'd love to hear about your strengths. And just business owner in general. There's plenty out there. I mean, Richard Branson, if you end up watching this magically, tell me how you got through it, man, and how you built Villaging with dyslexia, because hats off to you. So yeah, as I mentioned, drop a comment, share your experiences, tag someone who needs to hear this story, and remember, the way you think about design is your superpower. Peace out, guys. On to the next.